Juste une minute. Good evening. It's Thursday, February 20th. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Maya Trabulsi. It was an emotional send-off for some. After 2 weeks of coronavirus quarantine, 63 people said so long to MCAS Miramar today, happily heading home. KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman was there.
Around 24 people poured out of the bus, one step closer to going home.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the help. I really appreciate it.
One woman holding a baby was overcome with emotion.
Okay, thank you. Good luck.
She was heading to Texas. This last group of evacuees seemed to be mostly families with young children.
Very unforgettable.
That's how T. Fawn would describe his quarantine experience. He spent 2 weeks on base with his wife and 2-year-old.
It's an opportunity to stay with my daughter whole day.
Now the family is off to San Francisco to stay with relatives.
When you get to San Francisco, what's the first thing you're going to do when you get there?
Just have a Chinese traditional dinner.
Nice.
Fawn recently moved his family to Wuhan, China, the epicenter of the COVID-19 outbreak. He still has friends unable to get out of the city.
Very worried about them.
Fawn is not too concerned about how his family will be looked at after completing the coronavirus quarantine.
I think most of Americans can treat us fairly and treat us friendly.
Even though the family has been medically cleared by health officials, Fawn has a plan.
If we have symptoms of like coughing or sneezing or fever, we would see doctor.
There won't be any more buses with evacuees leaving MCAS Miramar. But there are still 2 people from the quarantine at local hospitals. One person who has the virus is at UC San Diego Health, and there is a minor under observation at Rady Children's Hospital. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
Officials tell us everyone who left MCAS Miramar today posed no risk to the public. Also overnight, health officials at UC San Diego Medical Center released one patient who had tested positive for the virus. The San Diego Union Tribune's editorial board is endorsing Pete Buttigieg for the Democratic presidential primary. He was on stage last night in a debate that's still generating buzz. Mary Maloney tells us how it was an especially tough night for one candidate.
In the 9th Democratic presidential debate, the focus was on a first-timer.
I actually welcomed Mayor Bloomberg to the stage. I thought that he shouldn't be hiding behind his TV ads.
Former Mayor Michael Bloomberg seeing a rise in the polls coincide with a brighter spotlight.
We shouldn't have to choose between one candidate who wants to burn this party down and another candidate who wants to buy this party out.
Feeling the heat from his fellow candidates for his support until recently of stop and frisk.
He didn't get a whole lot done. He had stop and frisk, throwing close to 5 million young black men up against the wall.
Past comments about women.
A billionaire who calls women fat broads and horse-faced lesbians. And no, I'm not talking about Donald Trump. I'm talking about Mayor Bloomberg.
And all that campaign cash he's spending.
Grace,
let me finish.
Bloomberg didn't hold back.
If he goes and is the candidate, we will have Donald Trump for another 4 years, and we can't stand that.
Beyond the new person on stage, Senator Bernie Sanders was looking for another win in Nevada to keep his momentum going strong.
We
got more union support than you have ever dreamed of. We have the support of unions all across this country.
The debate was also a critical moment for former Vice President Joe Biden after disappointing performances in Iowa and New Hampshire.
NBC did a poll yesterday. It says Joe Biden is best equipped to beat Donald Trump.
Senator Elizabeth Warren also looking to reestablish herself as a top-tier candidate.
It's not a plan, it's a PowerPoint. And Amy's plan is even less. It's like a Post-it note.
In Las Vegas, I'm Mary Maloney.
For years, San Diego's political leaders have sought money to expand the convention center, help the homeless, and fix streets. Now a ballot measure promises funding, but as iNews Source investigative reporter Mary Plummer finds, many details remain uncertain.
Residents of San Diego will decide the fate of Measure C during the March 3rd primary election. If 2/3 of voters say yes, the ballot measure will increase the city's tax on hotel stays. But an iNews Source review of the text found details that could change what happens to that new revenue over time. For one, the city's debt could increase. A provision allows the possibility that a cap on bond sales for the convention center expansion could be lifted. And despite campaign promises, there's a chance the city council could dip into the general fund if the higher room tax doesn't raise enough money to cover the debt. Other details, such as how money to help the homeless will be spent, wouldn't be decided until after the election. Here's longtime political consultant Tom Shepard.
Some progress has been made in formalizing commitments on how the money is going to be distributed, but you can't, in an ironclad way, force the council, a future council, to adhere to specific spending commitments. So I think it's entirely possible that there will be adjustments as time goes on in terms of how these funds are distributed.
Shepard is not working on Measure C, but he did work on 2 successful campaigns related to the convention center, a 1983 plan to build it and a 1998 expansion. The city still owes $90.4 million on previous convention center expansion work. It's scheduled to be paid off in 2028. For KPBS, I'm iNews Source investigative reporter Mary Plummer.
iNews Source is an independently funded nonprofit news partner of KPBS. San Diego Superior Court judicial candidate Sean McMillan has sparked controversy with Facebook posts that are racially charged, include anti-immigrant themes, and mock gender identity. McMillan spoke to KPBS investigative reporter Amita Sharma just before a forum this week on bias in the judicial system.
Well, I thought it was funny. I thought it was interesting.
That's self-described civil rights attorney and San Diego judicial candidate Sean McMillan talking about his sharing of a post by the Minuteman militia. It contains photos of Monica Lewinsky, former NFL player Colin Kaepernick, and California Senator Kamala Harris, along with the message, "When nobody knew who you were until you got on your knees." He says he shares these missives to spark a conversation, and he adds they don't always reflect his views. But what about the meme of Lewinsky, Kaepernick, and Senator Harris? McMillan references Harris's one-time romance with former San Francisco Mayor Willie Brown.
You heard the news and the stories and all the stuff bandied about her and Willie Brown and all that stuff, right?
Okay, but you understand how that might come across as sexist?
I totally do. I get it. And had I known that I would do this, I might have been like all the other candidates and kept all my views secret, hidden from everybody. So you're all guessing what I really think.
But McMillan says he didn't know he would be running for judge, so he continued to share his views, unfiltered, like his reposting of a message by pjmedia.com that said, quote, "To reduce gun violence, arm all Americans."
I own guns.
You own?
I absolutely own guns.
Okay.
And if you look at Heller, that's the lead case out of the Supreme Court, it is a fundamental individual right, for sure.
On the issue of gender identity, McMillan shared a message showing $2 bills and the script, quote, "If I had $1 for every gender there is, I'd have $2 and a bunch of counterfeits."
Well, I mean, it's a mechanical issue, right? Realistically. It's a mechanical issue. How many genders are there?
McMillan also shared this message, quote, "Stop all welfare to illegal aliens and they'll deport themselves." But McMillan says that doesn't mean he's anti-immigrant.
All right, my wife is an immigrant. My sister-in-law is from Mexico. She's an immigrant, and they're all legal immigrants.
McMillan also shared a post stating, quote, "I was asked, are you happy with a racist president? I said, absolutely not. We replaced him with Donald Trump." He says that post still resonates with him.
You know, that's my view. I think that Obama did more things to create division, cultural division in our country than he did to heal.
When asked whether Trump's references to African nations as shithole countries and his characterization of a 2017 white supremacist rally and counter-rally in Charlottesville, Virginia, as having very fine people on both sides were healing, McMillan said he was unaware of those comments.
I swim in a very small pond, and generally speaking, I don't really see what's going on out in the world.
The San Diego County Bar Association has labeled McMillan as lacking qualifications to be a judge. Kamal Martin, political action chair of the San Diego branch of the NAACP, agreed. He slammed McMillan's posts.
Disgusting, absolutely reprehensible and abhorrent. And we will not allow people like this to fly below the radar and receive the votes of not just people from our community, but anyone's community.
But Martin added he applauded McMillan's candor. Amita Sharma, KPBS News.
Votes are already being mailed in for the March primary. The KPBS Voter Guide can help you organize your ballot. It's customizable to your area. Just enter your location and you'll get a list of all the races and the measures. You can also save your choices to save time when you're ready to vote. Just look for the KPBS Voter Guide banner on our homepage, kpbs.org. Free tuition to USC. That's the goal of a new program aimed at students whose families have an annual income less than $80,000. Also, home ownership will not be counted in determining a student's financial need. Officials say the changes are being made to open a wider door to talented students from all walks of life. You may recall USC has dealt with a series of scandals, including the college admissions bribery case. When developers build high-rises that include both market rate and affordable housing for low-income families, do they have an obligation to provide the same amenities to both groups? KPBS reporter Claire Tregesser says a high-rise project in downtown San Diego has brought that question to the public square.
And my mom comes out here to come and sit.
Jackie Hernandez thinks back on some of the places she's lived and cringes.
And the roof started to cave in the bathroom. I started to notice there's a bubble. And they're all, no, I don't see it. And I go, yes, there's a bubble. And then later it just...
Now she uses Section 8 housing vouchers to help pay for a place in an older complex in San Diego's University Heights neighborhood. There are some repairs that could be done.
Do you see these? Do you see these railings that got fixed? They were not standard to the Section 8.
Still, she's happy with it. But what if she had the chance to move into an affordable apartment downtown in a brand new building? But there would be a catch. She and the other low-income renters would be in a separate building with a separate entrance.
Honestly, I don't think it's right. I don't think it's fair. We've got enough division here in this world. And whether people believe it or not, you know, we're all made in the image of God. I'm totally looking different than you are, but, you know, we all have the same blood.
So this is Pinnacle International's job site. This is their current project.
Armando Nunez stands in front of one of the towers the developer Pinnacle International is currently building downtown. He's with the local carpenters union and is a big critic of the projects. Pinnacle is building 3 towers with market rate apartments, which would probably rent for around $2,700 for 2 bedrooms. And then it would put 60 affordable housing units in a small building close by. Those would rent for about half the normal rate. The affordable housing would connect to one of those towers, but the lower income renters couldn't use its pool, spa, or rooftop deck. An argument in support of this arrangement is that by paying more, you get access to more amenities. But Nunez equates that to segregation.
So if you're really helping out the community, then everybody's an equal citizen. Everybody's a human being. So Why would you classify different levels of citizens in San Diego?
The downtown planning agency, Civic San Diego, rejected the plan, and Pinnacle, the developer, threatened to sue. Now they are calling a temporary truce to try to come to an agreement. Both Civic and Pinnacle refused KPBS interview requests, citing the lawsuit. But Pinnacle's lawyer sent a statement saying it should be commended for actually building affordable housing instead of paying a fee, as other developers do. If approved, this would provide much-needed affordable housing in downtown San Diego much sooner than would otherwise be the case, the statement said.
These types of sort of separate entrances for low-income tenants are nicknamed poor doors.
Sasha Harnden says developers in other areas, particularly New York City, have tried creating so-called poor doors. He says developers and even cities, if they approve the projects, may be violating federal fair housing laws.
When a given action may have, a disproportionate impact on a protected class, such as people of a certain race, elderly tenants, families with children, that can incur fair housing liability. That can be a prohibited practice, even if it's not intentional discrimination.
Maya Rosas stands on a busy corner in downtown San Diego. She's a member of the YIMBY Democrats, which advocates for the housing movement called Yes in My Backyard. She says it's important for new housing projects to build affordable housing on site.
That's how we create integrated communities. It's how we desegregate communities. And that's how we let families thrive.
That means, in theory, she would support a project like Pinnacle's that would help low-income families access the schools, parks, restaurants, and shops in downtown. But
we need to expect more from our developers to truly integrate our housing.
Rosa says she wishes the city had rules that wouldn't allow for a project like this in the first place.
It's so hard. We're in a tremendous housing crisis right now. People are struggling, and every single unit, especially affordable, is so needed, which is why it's so unfortunate to be in this situation where this project is not going to be built, or at least it's seriously delayed.
She may get what she wants. A new bill was proposed this week by State Assemblywoman Lorena Gonzalez that would block developers from creating separate facilities for low-income and market-rate residents. Claire Tregesser, KPBS News.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, President Trump weighs in on his friend Roger Stone's prison sentence. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
Safety improvements have been made to a busy transit hub in the North County. A new rail undercrossing was unveiled this morning at the Poinsettia Station in Carlsbad. The nearly $34 million project also included station upgrades, a lengthened platform, and fencing between tracks. Officials say the improvements will help regional train service and traveler times, enhance customer safety, and support future increased ridership. The San Diego District Attorney's Office is launching a digital outreach campaign to tackle what it says is an opioid epidemic in our community. KPBS reporter Priya Sridhar has more on this 6-month project.
If you take prescription opioids like Vicodin or Percocet to party, it may not look like much on the outside, but serious damage is happening on the inside.
This is a public service announcement that's part of the new San Diego opioid project unveiled today by the San Diego County District Attorney's Office. The campaign targets particularly vulnerable demographics based on research and will be featured on social media platforms like Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. It's meant to dispel myths about opioid use.
Research shows a lot of people who abuse opioids think that they can do so safely. One of the reasons they think that is, after all, it comes in a pill, in a medicinal pill form.
The ads drive people to a website, SanDiegoOpioidProject.org, where they can find resources for treatment. The DA's office says in 2018, 210 people died from accidental overdoses caused by prescription opioids in San Diego County. Sherry Rubin's son was in a coma when he was 23 after he took a dose of OxyContin that doctors say was as strong as black tar heroin.
He could control everything else in his life, but he couldn't control this. Had this campaign been accessible and the knowledge out there, I know that we could save lives.
Organizers of the campaign say the goal is to not just educate the community about the dangers of opioid use, it's to change behavior and save lives. Priya Sridhar, KPBS News.
Scientists at an oceans conference here in San Diego gave a grim warning about the Earth's coral reefs. They say climate change could kill all the reefs by the year 2100. The group from the University of Hawaii said warmer oceans, acidic waters, and pollution are expected to destroy up to 90% of all existing coral reefs in the next 20 years. They say despite all the efforts to restore the reefs, it likely won't be enough. What happens when you introduce hippos to an area where they've never lived in the wild before? KPBS producer Amal Yunus says San Diego researchers are studying the environmental impact of hippos that have gone wild in Colombia.
When the infamous drug lord Pablo Escobar lost his empire, he left behind a family zoo in Colombia full of exotic animals. Most of them were safely relocated, except for the hippos. Today, Escobar's 4 hippos have multiplied to more than 80 living in the wild in central Colombia. UC San Diego biologist Jonathan Shuren has been studying them for the past several years.
I learned about this story about the hippos. There was no one doing any research on it, so I said this is too good to pass up.
Shuren's team is looking to see what impact these large mammals are having on the environment, especially water quality. Hippos deposit their waste in lakes, and researchers found that lakes with high levels of organic waste cause algae blooms and may lead to fish die-offs. It's been thousands of years since such large mammals have freely roamed South America, so scientists like Shuren have a chance to study the effect on the environment up close.
They're not confined in any way, and they showed me places where they sort of walk through barbed wire fence, where they have fences for cattle that keep the cows in, but the hippos just kind of walk through the barbed wire.
The Colombian hippos are the only wild population outside of Africa. They are also a tourist attraction.
There is one main group of them that's in one lake that has a little restaurant next to it, and people, that's where if you go see them, that's where you see them.
Shuren says the local government in Colombia is unsure what to do next about how to control the hippos.
So there's sort of 3 choices, right? There's do nothing, which is what's currently being done, and allow them to continue to grow. There's catch them and either relocate them or sterilize them. So if you could, in theory, if you caught all the males and sterilized them all, then the population would sort of live out their lives, but they wouldn't make any new ones. Or you go and shoot them all, which would be easy, but not palatable for most. Most people would be bothered. That would be publicly unpopular.
So what's the prediction for how large the hippo population will grow? Shuren estimates it could reach thousands in the next few decades. Amal Yunus, KPBS News.
The weekend could bring us some rain. Dajia Swat has our weather forecast.
Mainly clear conditions tonight here in San Diego, dropping down into the mid-50s. As we take you across the region, also a tranquil night for Oceanside, low of 47. Dry conditions extending into Borrego Springs and Mount Laguna with your overnight low at 40. We are going to start to notice some changes here as we head into your Friday night and Saturday, and that is going to be due to our next disturbance, which at the surface is a low pressure, but in the upper atmosphere, we'll have a dip in the jet, which is known as a trough, that will continue to swing in that moisture across much of Southern California and even into Arizona, and even could see some snow in some of our higher elevations across portions of California as well as Arizona. As for San Diego County, a high of 69 in Oceanside, so we start tomorrow off with dry conditions, getting some sunshine in, also looking beautiful for the first half of the day in San Diego with a high of 70, upper 70s in Borrego Springs, and a high of 57 in Mount Laguna. It looks like there's no signs of wet weather. Then as we continue throughout your Friday, cloud cover will continue to feed in, and really late Friday moving into those overnight hours. By Saturday morning, showers will start to build across much of the southwest region. We will kick off Saturday morning with the likelihood for showers and continue to see them throughout majority of the day. Saturday, 7 p.m. local time. There still will be some remnants of that moisture and cloud cover, definitely going to be noticeable here in San Diego. Not anticipating more than a quarter of an inch, but some spots to the north and west of San Diego could see a half an inch of precipitation when it's all said and done. This moisture will eventually move a little further to the east and we begin to dry out. So Friday night, changes really start to happen. We will continue to see that wet weather really throughout your Saturday at the coast with a high of 62. Then dry once again Sunday. Temperatures will continue to warm into your Tuesday. Also looking dry into your extended forecast for inland areas. A high of 82 by Tuesday for inland areas. Very warm flow coming back there. Will be in the lower 40s Saturday in the mountains with spotty showers, and also accounting for spotty conditions with that wet weather in the deserts for the start of the weekend. Reporting for KPBS News, I'm your meteorologist, Daji Aswad. Back to you.
In a unanimous vote today, California's Assembly passed a bill that formally apologizes to Japanese Americans for moving 100,000 people to internment camps during World War II. As Lonnie Wong reports, it was the largest forced relocation in U.S. history.
This picture is our family in 1942, just before we left for internment.
Les Uchida was just 5 years old when his family was incarcerated in an internment camp in Arkansas following the bombing of Pearl Harbor. Forced to abandon jobs, businesses, and homes, many never recovered. Les's dad was forced to sell his fleet of agricultural delivery trucks at fire sale prices.
He tried to establish the business when he came back, but a lot of people had lost their farms.
There was never any evidence of disloyalty or espionage involving anyone in the camps. Les's parents were born in the United States and dressed their son in a U.S. military uniform for this family portrait. The resolution apologizes to families for the state legislature's role in executing Presidential Executive Order 9066, establishing the camps. Les cites the findings of a presidential commission on why it happened.
Racial prejudice, war hysteria, and lack of political leadership. So there were a lot of people, not just politicians, that didn't speak up.
In 1988, Congress gave camp survivors $20,000 each in reparations. After nearly 80 years, the issue has surfaced once again. By all accounts, the internment of Japanese Americans during World War II was one of this nation's most egregious injustices. But while some consider it ancient history, others feel the episode is still relevant. The Florida chapter of the Japanese American Citizens League regularly supports anti-discrimination efforts based on race and religion, most recently supporting Muslim rights.
Our community has suffered the same type of discrimination in the past. It happens decades later, and that's why we say never again.
Now 82 years old, Les is a docent at the California Museum, often giving his insights to school children.
It should not be forgotten because it's really kind of a civics lesson for all generations.
That was Lonnie Wong reporting. State senators will take up a version of the resolution later in the year before it goes to the governor. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thank you for joining us tonight. Have a great evening.